Hey, everybody, thanks for coming out. My name is Jeremy Stark. Today, we're going to be talking about some things that are new in routing, locations, and emergency calling for teams. Always want to say thank you to the sponsors that've come out, make this show possible. I was joking with Matt earlier today at the end of the last session. Talked to Momentum a little bit. Familiar with what Cisco does. I haven't seen Orchestree and Anywhere Now yet, but I still need to go and chat with them. I have been around for a little while doing various team stuff. Before that, I was doing some stuff in Skype for Business, and before that, we had a thing called Link, and before that, we had another thing called Office Communication Server. So probably, if there are bodies buried somewhere in the stack, I at least know at what architectural layer they have been buried. And I really appreciate y'all coming out for the session, but I will preface this by saying, probably if you saw me last year, it's a lot of the same stuff. I'm going to have slightly different commentary on it. But right now, there's all this other stuff. Now, granted, you had to come all the way up here to this room, but I will call out Michael LaMontagne, who pinged me over Teams, and he's like, dude, we're literally at the same time. This sucks. Like what are you doing to me? And so I wanted to make the point that if you want to have a more deeper session for teams, don't hesitate to go see Michael and Habib doing 400 level of some crazy stuff. I'm gonna see if I can get this to disappear real quick, because that is going to be annoying. And I bet that's not going to do it. Oh, no way. Turn it off and turn it back on again. It actually worked. Apologies for the vagueness in the table of contents here. Really, as an engineer, I kind of think about the stuff that we've done. I like to talk about what we've built as a way to kind of have accountability to the process, so that way we're not just always talking about stuff that we're planning on doing, like, hey, we actually delivered some things, and then what we're actually in the process of building. And I was pretty stoked. Like, for my presentation last year, I was able to move a couple things up, which was nice. And then we're still, when I think about planning, literally that's happening right now, where we've got a whole mess of developers and a whole mess of PMs like myself who are trying to figure out like how we're going to order our work for the next 6 months. And so there's some stuff going on in planning that we want to talk about. Definitely have an opportunity for questions throughout. So I'm just going to kind of start off and talk about a couple of the features that have gone out recently. Super curious if folks run into these things, or if this is particularly applicable to your environment. First, a little bit of kind of context setting around emergency call notifications. So every time you place an emergency call, when an emergency call is placed in your organization, that's a fairly important thing. And generally, some folks in the organization need to be notified. And so we have a policy system to be able to set that up. And so when folks dial an emergency number, you can then set some type of mode for allowing folks in your organization to be aware that this happened. And so you configure within this policy, hey, are you going to get a Teams call? Are you going to get you're going to get added into this thing and to this this live call? Are you going to get some other type of notification? But what we found is that customers were saying, this is fine, great, we can have it in Teams, but what we really need to have is a way to take this information about an emergency call and then integrate it into another system, or send it in email. The email thing, I literally just had this come up earlier this week, and it surprises me, right? Because email's great, but I don't think of it in the same kind of urgency or real-time sense as what an emergency call would require. So I no, we're not putting an email, feature in here, but you can send an email if you want when an emergency call happens, because now we have a RESTful API that's all built in Graph that can have this information sent out to wherever you want it to go. Essentially, what we've done is we built a pipeline that takes that data chunk about the emergency call that would normally go onto a Teams chat, and we were able to throw that into a Graph endpoint. Question was, is this a webhook or is this a subscribe notify? Not a developer, but it is a subscribe type of process. The subscription that you send is for that policy that I showed earlier. And so the scenario there is if you're a sufficiently large enough company, you may have different emergency calling policies for different sites in your organization, right? And then you may have for a particular site a treatment that you want to have when somebody makes that emergency call that would be different from another site. If your site in Germany is managed by an outsourcer, but your site in Charlotte here in the US is managed on-prem, then you may have very different dispositions for those events. So the way that this works is that the Teams admin goes and configure all the emergency calling pieces, and then a custom client application is written to do that subscription. And so I subscribe to the policy that I want to pay attention to when that gets triggered when emergency calls get made. The subscription is per application, tenant, and policy instance, right? So you can have a whole bunch of these applications, you can have a whole bunch of these policy instances, but that subscription is unique for each of those combinations. And so once I make that subscription, if anyone makes a E911 call, then Graph will spit that out to my client application, and I can get that information and then go do something useful with it. Duration of the subscription's a day. Oh, that was kind of weird. Apparently, that's just what Graph does. That's standard. And so folks are fairly familiar with the process of rehydrating those notifications. And so then if you want to go and configure this, docs are available, published, and I found that it's fairly straightforward for folks. Not a ton of pickup on this, but folks that are using it are really using it because their scenario is, hey, we want to make sure that our outsourced facilities team, that they're going to get a notification in the ServiceNow application or whatever it is that they're using. Questions on this? Make sense? Cool. Also in the kind of realm of emergency calling, Aaron Steele had a session a couple sessions ago talking about the concept of, hey, once you get emergency calling set up, you're gonna want to do some type of kind of periodic validation or periodic kind of sense checking that everything is still working. And the reason for that is that clients are really particular about their network information, and we need to have this accurate location in order to do the right thing with respect to emergency calling. And it can be kind of hard to keep that network information accurate. The kind of classic example that I think of is somebody bumps a ladder into the wireless access point, the radio falls off of the ceiling, shatters, network team goes and replaces that radio. Fine. But that radio is likely to have a different unique identifier, a different unique BSS ID than the old one had. And so now if you're not setting that up in Teams, if you're not refreshing that information in Teams, Teams is not going to know what that particular radio's location is going to be. And this type of concept of configurations going stale, or essentially the knowledge that the team services have about what's going on in the world is out of date. The model that we've created inside of our services doesn't match the reality anymore. And troubleshooting this is terrible. It can be really, really hard, and you're finding yourself like digging into client logs in order to go like, okay, client picked up this address. What does that mean? Okay, clients actually using subnet instead of location, instead of the SSID. All right, what does that mean? What's going on? So what we've tried to do is put together a set of reporting that takes all of that chatter between the client and the service and summarizes that up and puts that into some view that allows admins to be able to make some sense of this stuff. Where you find this report is in Teams Admin Center under this kind of standard usage reporting. It's not really a usage for it's not it is an imperfect place. But there is a tremendous amount of data that gets funneled and summarized and made available here. Yeah, in the back. No, it's not going to know that. So what you're going to see is clients clients maybe in that physical location, not connecting to, not showing that AP is mapping to that location, right? So clients will connect to that AP just fine, but then you'll see like, wait a minute, they're connecting to this AP, but that AP is not matching with anything that's running in lists. So now there okay, wait, our network is drifted, and we've got to be able to go and see like what's actually happening with that BSSID. The example that I'm showing here is me getting lucky that there was some stuff in this gory demo tenant. Not demo tenant, like dev tenant, and super gory. And I was like, oh, hey, cool. It's TAC, and it actually shows some stuff. And this is the screenshot of it, of what it actually looks like. So no, I think this was just it was a network identifier, and so yeah, I think this is the demo tenant. It's just goofy. But the idea is, yes, the goal is when you have a scenario, when you have a suspicion of a scenario where matching isn't happening or it's not making sense, this is a place to come for that troubleshooting. Yeah. It'll show both matches and not matches. So you'll be able to see clients matching against the SSIDs, or you'll be able to see clients matching against subnets. If somebody went into Teams and said, yeah, this subnet, instead of it being in San Francisco, now it's in Los Angeles, it would still show that it's matching, and then the match result would be in this UX. You can scroll further and you can see the location that's being driven by that match result. Yeah, way in the back. Thousands of records. Thousands of records. Question was, can you export it? I apologize for not repeating the questions. I think folks most of the time hear this, but for the recording, that may not be the case. Yeah, no, not yet. Here's the thing. TAC can do this export. TAC has a cohesive export mechanism across all of these tables. The thing that's a little bit weird is that the website actually needs to perform this asynchronously, and so it's a little bit more of a complicated process. We have a backlog item for it. I can't talk about when that would happen, but we definitely want to have that happen because it's concur. It's a tremendous amount of data. Today, I don't have a good answer for it. I don't have a good answer for how you could extract this in a way that's really meaningful because it's not in PowerShell. Yeah. Thank you for giving me yet another great opportunity to improve the product. That's why we come out here. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. We had a few different dimensions of filtering here, and wanted to initially just kind of get it out the door and see where people were having some difficulty first. Yeah. Ports. Yeah. So there's yeah, exactly. I really the way to think about how we do matching is across 3 dimensions. Um, Port and switch, I just kind of think of as LLDP. So if you configure LLDP, cool. You could do it at the switch level, or you could do it at switch and port level if you want to, if that's necessary. But I think about it as LLDP, subnet, Wi-Fi. Um, Anyone done the LLDP base? Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. No, we're not cutting it. It's okay. We're not. I was just curious. I'm stoked to the interest. If this is sideways for y'all, definitely let me know. Because there's a good opportunity to get these improved. Speaker speaker confessional time. This slide is probably 3 hours old because I was talking with somebody down the booth, and they had a customer listed on there, and I go, we did a feature for them, and I haven't talked about it. Well, this is the feature. Blocked call treatment. You've always been able to block calls 2 different ways in Teams. So there's the end user call blocking thing where, my undesirable person in my life keeps calling and I want to report that. That's not what we're talking about here. This is configuring blocked calls at the tenant level. And so you can configure block calls, and you can configure ranges around those block calls, things like that. It's all intended to deal with frequent nuisance callers that are just that have just been inhabiting your PSTN. Historically, if configured, caller gets a network reorder tone to try to. Oh, I thought I could do that. Contemporary, yeah. I can't hit that last one. But anyway, they get a network reorder. This particular customer said, here's the thing. We don't want any of these calls, but we have to take them. And when we take them, we want to essentially black hole route them, but not have them appear to be black hole routed. So we want to run to a voicemail box and then dump the voicemail, essentially. Cool. Great. Now we can do this with a resource account parameter. Yeah. I wish I could say more about this scenario. Toll fraud's definitely a big. Oh, question was, do you guys do anything with secure logics with regard to toll fraud? Because they do stuff like this. Not that I'm aware of. I don't look after that part of our business, though. There's a part of our business in engineering that is exclusively around fraud and verifying customers and verifying tenants and that sort of thing. And that may be something that's happening that I'm not aware of. What this is around is you have a particular caller that maybe because of a license or a law, you have to answer that call. Okay, so you can't block the call. So you answer it, and if this resource account parameter is configured, then it'll answer the call, it'll dump it to that resource account, and then you can do whatever you want with it. If that means you want to ring it to a voicemail box, you want to take it to an auto attendant. In this case, customer just wanted to send it to voicemail and be done, but they couldn't quote unquote block it. So if you configure this without the resource account, everything still works the way it normally does. once you configure the resource account, that's what we're going to do. So we didn't get into like a priority thing. We didn't get into a whole lot of like super deep logic around, multiple failover resource accounts or things like that. But if there is some feedback where there would be some cool utility on that, happy to take it. In PowerShell today, blocked treatments aren't available in TAC broadly. Should that happen, it will include this. It will include this work around the RA. Yeah. That's an exciting form of torturing this feature. Yeah. I can't think of how that could blow up off the top of my head, but it's possible. Yeah. Yeah. It's regex. Yeah. So no, you can be very flexible with this. Yeah, totally. I mean, you could black hole route, every call from France. don't want to give anybody any bad ideas, but yeah, this again, just putting this out there, because even though this isn't, this is never going to hit some marketing slide, these are some important things for practitioners to be able to be aware of in terms of, where the big print giveth and the small print taketh away kind of thing. It's important for me that everybody in this room kind of understands that stuff as practitioners. Following that same premise, I'm going to dive into multi-line. Multi-line's brand new. I'm sorry, multiple phone numbers assigned to a user. We call it multi-line internally. The scenario for multi-line is pretty exciting, where you are getting the opportunity to have multiple phone numbers assigned to a user, and being able to do a lot of kind of cool flexible things with it. The number one that everybody asks, that I think everybody knows by now, is that when I talk about my usage and my regions, I can have multiple phone numbers in different regions, in different country codes, than my usage location in M365, right? So I'm a US user in M365. I have a US primary phone number. That none of that's changing. But then I can have alternate numbers in wherever, in Japan, in Germany, etc. Really similar UX. If everyone's done kind of dial with different caller ID lines, same sort of UX in the front end, for end users to be able to use. When I talk about the big print giveth and the small print taketh away, this is the big print. And so what I'm going to do is give you all the small print that's associated with each one of these. So that way, so you kind of know where some of the pitfalls are. So the first thing is that, depending upon who you ask now, you may hear that you can have 9 alternate numbers. You can have 9 numbers in teams, and it's going to get all confused. Here's how that breaks down. You always are going to have a primary number. Then you can choose to have a private number, private line, been around for a little while, and then up to 9 alternate numbers. Private and primary are both still going to be locked to the user's current M365 usage location, though. So nothing's changing on that. When you're doing call treatments, be really, really careful, because you can find yourself in a really kind of bizarre set of routing. The routing for call treatments applies to the user object, not to the phone number, right? So if I say forward my calls to voicemail, that's forwarding all of these numbers to voicemail. It's forwarding my user essentially to voicemail. And where we see difficulty is when folks are doing stuff like, forward to this alternate number, forward to this cell phone number kind of thing, when they already have that configured, and then can cause some odd behavior, to say the least. So watch out on that, and just be aware of the numbering, because customers are going to hear that weird or differently. Alternate numbers can be from any geographic region the tenant has presence in. I thought that terminology was really curious, and so I followed up on what that means. Essentially, you need to have an emergency address, not assigned necessarily to that user, but that you have to have an emergency address in lists in the database to be able to have that number. I'm not sure where this came from, if there's some like super deep architectural reason here, or if this is more of a kind of proving that there's a use for the organization to have a number in that region as a kind of regulatory thing. Hadn't kind of figured out where that comes from yet, but that's what it means. So yeah, you can have numbers anywhere. You do need to create an emergency address for it though. Yep. No. Yeah, actually, next point. I'll get that up on next point. Yeah. You think it's regulatory? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So easily solved though. No big. Not so easily solved is our ability to have this be deployed in GCC High or DoD, what we call our Fairfax clouds. That is not available today. Yes, definitely something we're going to do. In order for us to get this working, tremendous amount of infrastructure enhancement had to happen in the back end. We're still working on getting those enhancements operating in the Fairfax cloud. But all good in commercial, no worries there. Any phone number type. So I had the question earlier, what kind of phone numbers are we talking about? Any phone number type, and importantly, any combination there. So there's no restriction on like DR plus operator connect from a few different vendors plus calling plan. Like all that's fine. All that's good. We will not though allow you to assign service numbers as alternates. They all have to be user numbers. Not that makes a big of a difference in DR, but sorry for calling plan. Just we haven't violated that premise yet. Service or user numbers only. Number assignable policies. Well, it sounds like a great thing. Like, oh, cool. Now numbers have policies. Policies only used to be assigned to users before. How exciting! Yeah, it's great. We had to do this for emergency calling. This was necessary, right? There's the only way that we can make this work. So we did make the right decision to say, let's bring in all the policies, all good. Except you'll find that in TAC, online dial-out policy, and shared calling policy, which is technically called team shared calling routing policy. Both of those aren't in Teams Admin Center. You got to configure those in PowerShell. They work. The thing that also to remember is that numbers get policies when they're assigned to a user. But once you pop that number off of the user, we strip all those policies away. We're not gonna let you kind of pre-configure a pile of numbers with policy and then assign those to users. You're gonna have to assign the number and then assign the policies on top of that. I got a view of what that looks like in TAC here in a second. The other thing that I learned at the show was if you pop the primary number out, all of it goes away. So in order to have an alternate number, you must have a primary number. And so if the primary number is unassigned, the alternate numbers will become unassigned as well. So pay attention to that, especially if you're doing kind of automation sort of workflows in here as well. Voicemail, call history across lines. Yep, absolutely. Kind of cool that again, kind of similar to call treatment, as call treatment is a user thing, voicemail a user thing, not a phone number thing. So you're gonna have your voicemail. All of these numbers are going to dump into one voicemail box. You will see dialed number in the client call history. Good stuff. That's great. Unfortunately, that's not in voicemail. I think that's a bummer. I'm not alone. But unfortunately, voicemail isn't picking that up today. Obvious opportunity for us to improve the capability of voicemail, but just be aware of that. Also, customers are going to, and I've actually heard it here at the show already. Customers are going to try to think about multiple phone number as a shared line appearance or a multi-line appearance type of scenario. Know that those are different. Know that multi-line appearance scenarios like, I want to be able to common scenarios in routing for stores and that sort of thing, retail establishments, absolutely something that we're looking at. That's not what multi-line is, right? Multi-line is really about having multiple phone numbers assigned to that user, not about having that phone number with a shared appearance across multiple instruments. Great analogy. The analogy of multiple SIM cards makes a ton of sense. Absolutely. Client support, desktop web, IP phones devices, coming soon on mobile. That actually, I think that was a pretty big win, as well as having administration through PowerShell and TAC, and shockingly enough, Graph. I don't know. Has anyone played with the Graph capabilities for assigning phone numbers? Big zero. Okay, cool. Yeah, it turns out that you can use Graph to assign phone numbers, and they actually have a method in there for primary, private, or alternate, and then a fourth one that is saved for future enhancement. Yeah. No change to that as a function of multi-line. So if you configure busy on busy and you're on a call and somebody from London comes in, then they'd be getting a busy signal. If you don't have busy on busy configured, it would ring through, just like if somebody called you on your normal line, right? That'll ring through too, even if you're on the phone, not on busy configured. So yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Oh, solid question. So the question is, you have a you have a you have two numbers assigned. One's primary, one's alternate. They use their primary number to call an international destination. It's an international call. If they use their international number to dial a local for that international location, I'm almost positive that's not set up as a international call in terms of cost. It's a great question. That I want to confirm that. So hold me accountable on that. Drop me an email, JA Stark, and I'm happy to go and follow up on that. That is one I didn't come up with. Calling plans. Yeah. No, it's specifically in the way that the question I think is, how do we calculate an international call? Do we calculate an international call as from to to, and or do we calculate an international call as usage location to, right? I think it's from to to, but I will find out. Um, but you wouldn't use an online voice routing policy if it's calling plan. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's fun though to be able to like troubleshoot and think through this stuff with you live. Like no, no stress. But that's not. Here's the thing. It really turns into like how we are going to be charged for that call, right? I mean that's fundamentally what this is all about, is how our finance is interested in making sure that we're not just bleeding um, cost of goods out the door. So yeah, yeah, right. And it's going to look like the from will be, yeah, right, right, right. Yeah. Now, yeah, exactly. There you could do a least cost. Yeah, 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 totally. You would do a least cost route there to say, oh, you're calling Japan, cool. Like I'm going to route that out through my Japanese gateway. That's no big, right? I really look forward to whoever is going to do a comms me next session next year. That is, this is what the multi-line configuration with least cost routing and everything else looks like, and with a handful of SBCs. That'll be great. Right. Um, Real quick on what the admin experience looks like. Now we've got a whole bunch of fun little boxes here for phone numbers. I have a primary and a private configured for this end user. I want to assign them an alternate. When I click to assign them an alternate, I get that standard dialog for what kind of phone number do you want. Now with DR, we all also now have in DR the ability to quote unquote upload DR phone numbers to TNM, to our to the telephone number backend. And so here's a whole pile of direct routing phone numbers that don't have any ability to be filtered. So this is obviously an opportunity for us to get a little bit better. But I can pick a DR number from here. When I go to assign that standard assignment flow. In fact, you'll notice that too in PowerShell. It's all the same assignment interface and kind of capability. So once I have that phone number assigned, we will prompt to say, you don't have any policies here. That may be fine, but you probably should be at least aware that emergency calling needs to be able to have this. And so here's that view for assigning policy. Again, shared calling policy supported. Dial policy also supported, just not available within this view. And so then once you get that policy assigned, you can get more details on that here in TAC, and then just keep clicking to have additional alternate numbers kind of going on through there. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So that's the stuff that we've built. We've gotten out the door. Now we're gonna kind of transition to stuff that we're working on. Overlapping subnets. Um, Overlapping subnets is an interesting conundrum because for a long time we were just telling folks, hey, you've got to go in and rewire your network, reconfigure it. You can imagine that is not well received in a lot of organizations. So just at a high level, I think we've talked about all of these just in terms of like how this stuff gets configured. The way that location acquisition actually happens, first we're going to have the workstation is going to get assigned onto the network, and so all the network information is going to be available to the client, whether that's Wi-Fi info, switch port information through LLDP or subnet. When I get that network information, today what happens is the kind of information about my active network adapter, we send that up to the services in M365. And then M365 is going to come back and say like, okay, cool, like here's your emergency address based off of the active network information that you've sent us. What we're trying to solve for, though, is the case where when I do that query, I can have multiple returns come back. And generally it's from some scenario like this. We see this a lot in M&A activities. So we've got a customer who have gone out, we've bought up a couple firms. Just so happens they also like to use the same subnet architecture that we do. And so now I've got a case where across Bangkok, Berlin, and Boston, I've got a 10.10.10.150/25 subnet. And when a client goes and says, hey, here's where I am, we can't disambiguate that, right? You could be in any of these 3 sites across the world, and we need to have some facility to be able to understand what that looks like. So what we're doing is we're allowing the configuration of sites to be not just this subnet record, but the record of both the subnet and the external IP address. And so when that gets queried, that should be enough to be able to have a unique determination back that, oh, you're actually in Boston because I'm seeing that your external IP is coming in from something that's registered. Today, you still configure the external IP, but we're not using that in the match. That's what's going to change here. We're actually going to be using the external IP address in that match to be able to disambiguate these kind of complicated scenarios. No. The intent's to not have it be required, and the intent is to have existing topologies remain the same. We don't want to have everybody going, have to retool all their location evaluation in order to take on this feature. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet because we're still early on in the development of it. But this is where we're looking at. The external IP is there to be able to differentiate between I'm working at home, I'm working in the coffee shop, I'm working in some public IP space versus I'm working on my prem, right? What this external IP is it's basically the gate that says, okay, you're on premises, cool. Now we'll go and we'll figure out like, is it subnet, is it LLDP, is it yeah, that's the right. So it's for this feature, we're actually using both of those pieces of data in order to make the evaluation. No, there's 2 places that we configure subnets, right? For location matching and for site matching. So I configure my sites to be able to drive policy. So if you need to configure both of those, we'll have location matching first and then site matching for policy and location-based routing. That's going to be a later topic. Today it's really around locations. Also, with kind of complicated networks and locations, this one's really popular these days. I'm seeing this one a lot. So remember I said earlier, like when the client gets this information from the network, what it gets is it gets all this network information. Well, today what happens is it sends the active adapter up to the cloud. And if you're on a VPN, your active adapter is the VPN client. Congratulations. Everybody is going to match exactly the same. And so clearly that doesn't work. You know, we initially were like, you're on premises. Why are you running a VPN? That's dumb. Well, cloud VPNs are a thing, right? You need to have some software there that's going to actually do that work. So we've seen that. And then we've definitely seen the kind of an increase in the zero trust type of modes for wireless, right? Yeah, wireless, even though you can connect to it, we're still going to require a VPN over wireless because we don't trust anything, right? Seen that more and more. And so, again, asking a customer, hey, why don't you go and reconfigure your entire corporate network in order to deploy our software? Generally doesn't go over very well. So what we want to have is a scenario where all of the network information is going to be sent into the cloud, and then we can match by Wi-Fi, by subnet, etc. It's funny though, when we set all the network information, boys, some workstations out there have got a lot of adapters. That was a surprise. We ended up having to do a chart and seeing like there's a good chunk of workstations out there in that like 20 plus range of quantity of adapters. Regardless, we're feeling good about this. Just about into testing with customers and validating it. Really expect that we'll be able to kick it out the door this quarter. Again, not a reconfig thing. Again, not expecting that this is going to be something that's going to blow up your topologies. But if you've got some customers that are running cloud firewall that runs zero trust Wi-Fi, this is going to make a big difference in their ability to manage stuff. Boy, I hope not, right? I mean, that's, yeah, clearly, spending a bunch of cycles, literal cycles and calories and to go and just decrypt stuff multiple times just upsets me irrationally. Yeah. No, no. This is primarily to support just kind of fundamental, hey, in this office, we require VPN, period. So we either have that and have this feature and be able to deploy Teams phone services or not. So I'd much rather have customers be able to deploy our services. Yeah, yeah. So hopefully this will fix some of those squirrely scenarios as well. Yeah, cool. So in development, but we're close. We're feeling good about this. Got the services up and running, and we're definitely on the path. Enhanced call restrictions. we've had the same kind of call restrictions for a long time, where you can say if it's a dialing out to the PSTN or as a user, or dialing out as a conference, and then for each of those different kind of call types, international versus domestic. Basically, there's this whole Zone A thing that unfortunately still continues to exist. But what we don't have is the ability to say things like, hey, I want to forward this call, but only during business hours. Or, hey, I want to forward this call, but not to Belize. Or, hey, I want to forward this call, but but not, or I want to have this. I want to be able to make this call, but not have it be a simul ring or not have it be a forward, right? Having granularity based on time, based on destination, and based on a further granularity of call type, not just calls meetings, but whether or not it's a forward simul ring as well. And we see these requirements come up in a bunch of different ways. Probably the most common is the common area phone. You shouldn't be able to pick up a common area phone at midnight on Sunday and dial to some high cost destination. That's just terrible. So we need to be able to have some way to control this. And so that's what call restrictions looks like. We think it's going to be a new policy object called Teams Dial-Out Policy. That's exciting. We're working on what that looks like. Don't hold me on that. I almost threw in what like the definition of the object is going to look like, but we're still kind of arguing a little bit over some of the finer points. But the intent is that it's going to have a full what we call policy lifecycle support. So today, the dial-out policy is kind of cooked, and you just assign it. You just grant that policy. You can't create custom instances of it in the same way you can for shared calling policy or the same way you can for calling policy. We want to break that, and we want to actually have a proper full boat normal policy kind of model here. And that policy, you will first think about what your destinations are, and that will be regex. You think about what your time of day is, and time of day will be a schedule that's like the voice apps schedule concept, but it will be a different object set. So in the same way that you can define business hours for voice apps as Monday through Friday 8 to 5, you would be able to define a similar sort of schedule for this, Monday through Friday 8 to 5, or the inverse of that schedule if you want to go outside of business hours. And then granularity to be able to do simul ringing versus call forwarding. We are actively working on this feature, although not as far along as we are with some of these others. So I'm hopeful that it's this year, probably later in this half, or in the next half. Yeah, I know. Why are we reusing the damn voice app schedule, Jamie? That was my initial take too, where it feels like these are at least close enough that we should try. Turns out that there's some just terrible architectural stuff that was going on. So it could be that we end up normalizing to this different set of objects, maybe. At the very least, I think in Teams Admin Center we can make this a little bit more straightforward for admins, to where they're not having to think through that complexity. But we will get there when we start thinking through the design of the pages and stuff in TAC. Yeah, I think this is a really important enhancement, though. We've had to do all sorts of goofy crap to be able to handle this stuff, like enhancements on the SBC layer, or kind of black hole routing from that. And then it's hard to do time of day, and so this to me feels like some pretty important enhancements to the product. Anyone hear this stuff from their customers? Is this you do the SBC today? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. Got it. Cool. Okay. We're just about at the end, so I've got 5 minutes to talk about what we're planning. I wanted to take the time here just to really focus on administrative units. the concept of administrative units is to provide to an admin the ability to segment out their tenant. So that way, if I'm an admin, instead of getting my entire view of the tenant, I'm only seeing a subset of that tenant. Really common for customers to say this as, hey, we need to have this other team be able to work in the tenant, but we can't give them access to everything. That would be ridiculous. Often centralized IT team is asking for this, and they have remote IT teams that are spread around the world that, hey, it would be great if they were able to stand up users and phone numbers and policies. Hey, it would be great if they could do common phone admin configuration stuff, but only within their scope, only within their with the privilege that they've been assigned. And so yeah, back in the day, this was no big deal. Each PBX was a box. It sat on site, and okay, do you have access to the box or not? And so when customers move to Teams, a lot of times they're having to kind of wrestle with this concept of, hey, I've got this coherent, global, super cool Teams phone system, but I'm transitioning from something that's very kind of siloed, and my IT organization's all based on that. Like, all my staffing is based on that. So to crack that, what we have in Entra, in the identity system, is the ability to segment your tenant and have an admin be assigned to that segment. And so the idea, this is an example from an education scenario, right? So I have my university, and within the university, school of business, school of engineering, school of medicine, whatever the case may be. And so then my different admins can then be associated with one of those administrative units. Another way to think about it is, when we're scoping the ability of administrators using RBAC, what we're scoping is what types of functions they can perform, but not to whom they can perform those functions, right? If I'm an admin and I'm scoped with the Teams communication admin role, then I can go and do a bunch of Teams communication stuff, but I can't go and manage channels in Teams, for example. I can't go and do Exchange. I can't go and manage Viva, whatever. With AUs, instead, you're scoping based on not the functions that admin can perform, but the objects upon which they're performing that function. So, can I manage this user? Can I manage this group? Can I manage this device? And so, one of the things that we're really looking at is to be able to set up Teams Phone to be able to be scoped along with these capabilities of admins. There is some existing capability here today. We did a set of work around administrative units that was frankly pretty minimal. So I can see devices, I can see policies, and I can sign them, and I can do some kind of basic phone number assignments. But what we're looking at is this whole realm of usage that admins have. I broadly kind of segmented it into these buckets: managing users, managing voice applications, managing operator and kind of PSTN integration pieces, policies, and then location. And when I've been talking to customers about this stuff, I hear pretty consistently these two. I hear pretty consistently like, yeah, we need to have that remote IT organization. We need to have them managing users, and I want them to be able to set up their own damn call queues and their own darn auto attendants, because the last thing we want to do is like do moves as and changes on this stuff. What I'm curious of is, one, folks hearing the same thing, and then two, folks hearing similar requests for capabilities down here. I don't hear as much. We're located in the Netherlands, but we have an SBC in Thailand, and we want to outsource, we want to have our, not outsource, we want to have our IT organization in Thailand be responsible for the SBC. I hear a lot less of that. I hear a lot less of, we want to make sure the organization in Thailand can update lists. I hear a lot less of that. But as we're going through and as we're planning some of this work, it's really important for us to understand, what some of the things that folks are hearing out in the world. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were going in a different direction. I thought you were going to go to resource accounts, but you went to a different one that's just as painful. Okay, fair. Got it. Oh, I know. I've got a DCR open for that. If you want to shoot me your information, I'll add you to the DCR, and then yell at the platform team for not fixing that. I know I'm out of time, and okay, good. I was wondering if that was why. Yeah. So with that, I want to release all the people who need to be released and say thank you so much for coming out, and thank you for the questions, and it's great to and I'm here, tomorrow, and it's really important for us to not only get this kind of feedback, but also if this is the kind of thing that you want to see in Cons of Next again, really, you can tell them, and you can say, don't give Jamie another session. It's terrible. It's not worth it, and that will happen because they care. They really care. Thanks everybody. Appreciate it.